Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We are here with yet another episode of Brand Bharat in Focus. And this time we have with us Mr. Sishir Sharma from RR Kabel. RR Kabel has been a brand in electrification products and cables across India. They've been very famous. We have with us Mr. Arjun. He's the co-founder of Aeroscope. That's an ad tech leader with multiple clients and specific focus into rural and tier two towns and markets. We also have with us Mr. Rohan Chincholi, the CDO of Havas, who has been a stalwart in the industry, if I may say, and has had multiple clients over the years handling different kind of genres of brands. Uh, the total topic of today that we are going to be kickstarting with is going to be how we localize strategies to reach out to markets in the rural areas. Shishir sir, I really would love for you to start the conversation. My first question for you is the most basic one that uh, rural India is now moving on from the basic electrification to home upgrades, right? They're moving to more branded products. They want more quality products. Uh, what are the clear signs of this shift? Have you also noticed the same? Have you seen rising demand from the rural India?
So thanks. See at RR Kabel, and very rightly mentioned by you. Is there a shift towards the rural India? Yes, at RR Kabel, we are very closely monitoring the rural India market, and it's just not the market. But for us, so we partner in the progress because what is happening is the electrification is transforming the consumption pattern as you go to see in the rural India.
Right.
Today, we are seeing a very strong shift which is taking place from just safety. It is more also looked upon as a energy efficiency and aspirations. So
Yeah.
we at RR Kabel are definitely going to be very excited discussing this particular precision marketing or micro marketing, I would say, and trust led ecosystem that can accelerate the transformation and sustainability of the
Yeah.
rural India. Yeah,
Yeah.
so yes, rural India has very clearly moved from access to aspiration. That is how I will put it.
Yeah.
Electrification no longer is going to be an end goal, rather, it is going to be a starting point for all of us.
Rohan sir, would you like to add something on this that from a data lens and consumer cohort lens, how do you what signs tell you that the rural market is ready for more brands and more premium products to be adopted?
Right. I think one of the most common denominators that I feel is important is the adoption and penetration of smartphones even in rural India.
Of course.
We have always been a market where we knew that the growth is where growth is actually going to come from rural. And an estimated close to 65%, I would say about 800 million people living in rural Indias. And if you're looking at smartphone penetration, I believe is a very strong starting point.
Yeah.
B, because the smartphone comes in, we are a market which is second lowest cost per GB. I don't know if we've already become first, but for a market where the cost of accessing internet is not heavy,
Yeah.
I think access to information has significantly gone up. People are transacting even in some of the rural belts. So taking that insights into account, and I think there was a statistics that came saying that as compared to 2024 in 2025, I believe the FMCG by net consumption by volume, rural
Hmm.
accounts for about close to 51%. So
That's a
some
huge number.
indicators say that it's going to move just beyond pure electrification towards you can call it anything, but I think the
Yeah.
purchase power, the aspiration, everything is where the many India's concept lie with many rural parts of India.
Makes sense. Arjun sir, I would love for you to dive in and add your perspective to this.
I think one of the important points that Rohan made is the smartphone penetration. So basically, rural India has about 67 to 70% of the population, split, and within that, you've got about within that rural population, which is about 94 to 100 crores. About 65% of that rural population lives in villages that are less than 5K in population. So it's a long tail, very remote, rural pockets. And what we have seen typically, of course, it changes from territory to territory. About anywhere between 30 to 35% of this population has smartphones,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And given the cost of data, which is one of the lowest globally, and the cost of smartphones, which is always dropping, uh,
Yeah.
you know, uh, smartphone penetration has become sort of mainstream. And what this is leading to for brands that want to target this market is that it's no more a line item in a plan. It's become mainstream of how to reach rural audiences. Yes, we are one of the channels, but brands think in a holistic way. Across channels, how do we hit and influence and build Toma with the rural audience?
Yeah. 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 Makes sense. Makes sense. Shishir, sir, coming back to you. Uh, I know that there have been campaigns by RR Kabel in the past as bridging distances, educating rural India. Uh, these initiatives were mainly done to connect electricians to, I think, families in the rural India and to create a connect between these two. My question is that जैसे tier one towns में it's very important to have an influencer to manipulate brand choices, brand decision choices, right? How important are electricians and small retail shops in rural India to kind of influence the decisions of homeowners and families?
See, whenever we talk about the rural India, the electrician here plays the real brand ambassador for any brand, and I would say he is the key influencer. Whenever we talk about the rural market, it's not about
Yeah.
the ads, and far more beyond the ads can reach. Electricians and the local retailer, they are going to drive the
Yeah.
decision making, and not just the consumer. That's the reason why at RR Kabel we are very heavily investing into the electrician education programs, and how to drive the safety and energy efficiency communications. We also partner with them in terms of the skill upgradation and certifications program, and we
Yeah.
also ensure that loyalty pipeline is continuously on a rise, and we do a lot to bring them on, not only on the loyalty pipeline, but we
Yeah.
drive several programs which is more from loyalty to legacy sort of a programs. And through these continual programmed rural drives, we what we are trying to drive is the trust, which compounds over a period of time, and training them
Hmm.
as well. And hence we see that there is a surge in the loyalty pipeline for tomorrow. That's what we are doing. And as we already saw and we discussed in earlier, once the electrification is done, it's not only limited to the lights, but then slowly you see the rural India upgrading from fans to
Yeah.
lighting to switches to small appliances and so on and so forth. But
Yeah.
still,
Yeah.
whatever we say, the drivers are going to be the electricians and retailers in rural India. They are the key
Yeah.
influencers.
Yeah, as Rohan and Arjun mentioned that smartphones are the main thing that are driving this demand, and you say that electricians are the main focus of influencer perspective for you. So via smartphones, how are you reaching out to electricians so they further suggest RR Kabel to their clients and customers?
See, for any loyalty program, and not only us at our Kabel, but all other companies, we were earlier driving it offline. These
Yeah,
programs or the loyalty pipeline used to be offline and
yeah.
manual. Now, if you go to with the digitalized and the transformation taking place, everything, the entire it is online,
Hmm.
and hence you would have a reach to, of course, the micro market level because of the smartphones, and we are
Yeah.
able to track them right up to the last mile. So that is what is happening, and
Okay.
we have seen a complete transformation last 5 years. That most of them, if I was to put it, close to
Hmm.
90-95% of them are today on the smartphone and using our loyalty program through their phones.
Yeah, yeah. Rohan, so as Shishir so mentioned, how electricians are, the main focus area via loyalty programs and stuff. Have you seen this rising trend of brands, putting in their money and trust on carpenters, electricians, masons in the rural area to reach out to their target market? Have you seen that a lot happening with other brands as well?
To be very honest, not really the electricians, but if I were to go into the auto category, we have been seeing this a lot. This is
Okay.
largely the auto category into the commercial vehicle, truck
Okay.
drivers. A couple of insights that we got is that obviously because of smartphone penetration, all
Yeah.
audience, creating testimonials of real life truck drivers talking
Hmm.
about vehicles gives a big added advantage.
Yeah.
We also, from a signal standpoint, right, it's important to note that because everyone has a smartphone, the consumption is threefold, right? One is the social consumption, because
Yeah.
he or she could be looking at a lot of reels, and the reels
Yeah.
could be on local languages. And because
Hmm.
smartphone is accessing this from a specific area, maybe
Hmm.
pin code level targeting works really.
Yeah.
Second aspect is search. People, whether searching non-English, vernacular, local languages, that are a very strong indicator of the information that they're looking for. So
Makes
that
sense.
is the second element that really works well. And from a
Yeah.
third element standpoint, there is a lot of messaging that is happening. Community building.
Hmm.
Staying
Yes.
true to these communities are very strong signals. So we have been seeing this in the commercial vehicle category for the brand that we manage very well, and I believe that the same trend should work, because end of the
Yeah.
day for rural markets, maybe with the markets less than 5,000 population, where we are literally talking about gram panchayat or literally at a district
Yeah.
level, who believe? Will they believe celebrities, or will they believe the one who is staying next door, who is their
Of
trusted advisor?
course.
So while we can call them influencers in their own way, I mean, we can call them advocates, but they are influencers in their own way. So as long as we engage with them and they become the voice, is a much long-term win, rather than just relying on urban thought process driven campaign, which just shortlists influencer in a specific area may not work. So literally, I think
Yeah.
this RR Kabel is also doing, literally going to those markets and finding the right
Hmm.
people and creating, in a way, lives and stories, and that beautiful video capturing, and the electrician is kind of doing something, and the family
Yeah.
on the screen. The emotional storytelling literally did come across very well, but I would trust with UGC and homegrown experts rather than just influencers when it comes to rural
Ah.
area.
Right, right. Arjun, so please dive in that. Rohan just mentioned that how pin code targeting is one way to discover the high potential markets and areas. What are other ways that brands like RR Kabel can use to discover high potential villages, and what will be the key drivers of growth over there?
So see, in our purview, given that we help brands reach rural India, we've seen various sort of brands activate campaigns with us. So we've seen largely electrical brands, which are pumps, lightings, fans,
Yeah.
etc. We've seen cement, which is a very very aggressive rural marketer. We've seen
Hmm.
which is a very aggressive rural marketer. But what we've seen common across all of these brands is that anywhere between 60 to 80% of their revenue comes from retail. So that's
Yeah.
something that we have seen, which is common across these brands, at least the ones that come in our purview. And when they say retail, the primary sort of profile persona that they're hunting for is something they call IHB, which is independent home builder, right?
Okay.
In the IHB scenario, what these brands say is that, see, in the city, nobody makes a decision of what cement, what paint, it's which cable, what switches. It's largely turnkey. You just
Yeah.
buy the apartment and you move on. You don't
Yeah. Yeah.
specific decisions. But in tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 rural India, the person actually stands in front of the house and gets it built. So
Hmm.
they are involved in most of the micro decisions that go
Yeah.
building that home. And given their influence in every brick being laid in that house
Hmm.
and decisions that they make, this is sort of the primary persona that building material brands want to reach out to, right? And
Yeah.
That said, in terms of strategies, we have seen, we have seen and seen multiple strategies.
Hmm.
One of them is infra shadow areas. So basically,
Hmm.
there are large infrastructure projects, let's say Noida Airport or Ganga Expressway,
Hmm.
Bharat Mala, which is
Yes.
heavy infrastructure investment that the government is making. These sort of infrastructure zones create shadow zones, right? Where land is acquired, labor comes in, and new money flows into villages surrounding us. So we help brands, identify these kind of locations, reach out to uh, the IHB, because
Hmm.
the challenge is to preempt, right? When the person is building the home, or before the person starts building the home, that's when you want to influence the brand awareness or the top of.
Hmm. Hmm.
We have seen, other signals like electrification in case of pumps, etc.
Yeah.
So what we do is we look at something called, ISRO provides these high resolution night light images, right? And we superimpose the administrative boundaries of villages, tehsils, blocks, etc. And we've actually seen growth in radiance across villages. And what we help these brands do is wherever there's growth in radiance, that means they would want to buy new electrical equipment both for farm
Yeah.
and their homes. So that is one strategy that we've seen. And then there are much more simpler,
Interesting.
like retail presence. So we've seen brands going into villages of less than 5K or
Yeah.
5K to 10K population, and setting up a retail presence, right? And
Hmm.
they say that my job is to generate demand for this particular
Yeah.
partnership. So though the marketing team looks at it at a national level, for them each retailer is extremely it's a very important relationship. So they take on the task to generate demand in the surrounding villages, target the audiences in surrounding villages to help generate demand for this particular retailer.
Understood. Shishir sir, my question is to you, as Arjun mentioned. Uh, but retailers are your main marketing source. Electricians are your main marketing source. But all of these conversations and conversions happen offline, most of it. Now, how do you measure your rural marketing ROI when it comes to a market like this, where the conversations are happening offline, the client conversion is happening offline?
See, to me, if you ask, honestly, in a rural, ROI is more about momentum and not about instant conversion, which is going to take place. So
Yeah.
here, what we are doing is that we look into the core KPIs. And what are these core KPIs? We look into the electrician preference of the brand. We look
Hmm.
into the retail pull through, and
Acha.
how his inventory velocity is playing, how
Yeah.
the inquiry is getting, whether the uplifted or not. And to do the lot of brand recall, we go into the key markets, and of course there are a certain amount of a campaign
Hmm.
we
Hmm.
run through. Also on to longer consideration cycle, if we were to looking at, it's not only about the wiring or the home fitting, but
Yeah.
more infrequent but a very high impact decision making is done through the RR, whereby we are doing a continuous education sort of a program which runs
Ah.
through on ground. And we
Yeah.
also look into the how the repeated local visibility is
Hmm.
taking place, right? So it maybe it's the event or through the activities which we carry out at the point of sales. All right.
Yeah.
And so this entire trade ecosystem, it continuously gets reinforced through the retailers loyalty program as well as the electrician loyalty program. Of course,
Yeah.
there is an online tracking which is going on. So we
Hmm.
also track as to whether the dealers lifting is going up or down, electrician scanning is going up or down, right? And whether the
Hmm.
cluster level sales is uplifted or not, what is happening, all that we check, and this all would then tie it back onto the ROI for us.
Okay. Makes sense. So it's more about the awareness and education and the repeat customer than measuring day-to-day instant ROI for you, right?
No, so it is also online tracking. So how do I back up?
Acha.
While we do all this, but the
Yeah.
ROI, if I was to look at, it would be directly from the online tracking which we do, right? So
Okay.
whether the number of electricians, those who were registered, how many of them are active, how many coils
Okay.
each one of them doing, what level they are on the loyalty program, whether they are scaling up, how many are dropping out. So it is done even for the retailer, even for the electrician, and that directly coincides with the ROI which I'm getting. Yeah.
Understood. Understood. Rohan sir, I would love for you to step in. As they said that, most of the communication is through education programs, awareness programs, electricians, retailers. Uh, how granular and how specific should vernacular and cultural localization be when a brand wants to do their storytelling in a market like this? And what are the ways that, you've seen brands measure their ROI and target consumers?
I think one of the key elements is that most of the campaigns that when we are doing, and I'm drawing my inspiration from at least the commercial vehicle category where I've been very active and looking at also tapping the rural India, is that
Yeah.
while we are thinking vernacular, it's not a just a 7 language or a 12 language narrative. That's a mandatory. Going vernacular is mandatory, but getting the local nuances or the local dialects becomes extremely critical.
Yeah.
Also, the trend between urban and rural is no different when it comes to video. So long format, while it works for building awareness for the brand, short format videos are here to stay, and I think it's
Hmm.
important that you constantly keep informing them. One
Yeah.
thing we must understand is that the online space content is broken down into 6 pillars. Content will either inform you, inspire you, help you, reward you, entertain you, or educate you. Now,
Okay.
what
Makes
is
sense.
my brand role today, and what are these 2 or 3 pillars that are critical? So, if you are into more educative, they would
Yeah.
like it. You give them entertainment, but is it important for drawing literally engagement? So,
Hmm.
to trade off and identify the pillars of content activations that are going to be extremely critical. uh,
Yeah.
Offline as a medium and offline as people both work,
Yeah.
right? So we have always for whenever we have ended up going to the rural parts of India in very limited capacity, we do see these large posters of a brand which still continue to stay and resonate.
Yeah.
Right, we will always be digital first. We will keep consuming a lot of brands, but that one image on a wall of a shop
Yeah.
stays with people.
Yeah.
It gives believability. And lastly, I think forget just relying on influencers. The rural India is building its own content ecosystem. People, because
Yeah.
they have a handheld, they are becoming influencers. There are
Yeah.
tools
True.
available in the market today that can shortlist these influencers, which could be micro or nano influencers, that
Yeah.
can be onboarded for a long term, activation for the brand. And it's not high cost, but it is very high engagement. So I think
Yeah.
all of this works, but the core philosophy is, I think if you do urban, you can do broad based, rely on the marketing platforms and their algorithms to do the
Hmm.
magic in terms of conversion. But when it comes
Hmm.
to rural, try and get the cohorts right, get the frequency right, and I'm sure that it will have a long term effect. And I like the example that Arjun gave, right? When you're doing these activations, getting some of insights at this level,
Yeah.
mapping whether it's district or blocks or tehsils, and going to pinpoint it, that's data of another level altogether, and marrying both of this is where it'll be successful. So that's my 2 cents about how we should go about.
Makes sense. I'm opening the floor. We are almost towards the end of our conversation. I'm opening the floor for an open conversation around that. We have seen a lot of solar and hybrid energy coming into rural areas now. The government is pushing these sort of technologies to be a part of the rural India. How does this add to the opportunity, especially for a player like RR Kabel? How do you marry this new technology to your existing business model? And then Rohan and Arjun together can share about how this actually helps in a better marketing strategy online and offline when we integrate these two technologies together.
So, rightly posed by you, solar, if I go to see renewable energy itself, is more of a hybrid. I would say not only the energy adaptation, but it is sort of even the thought process, because solar adoption is more of a trust journey and not a tech journey, we would put it.
Yeah.
Because what is happening is solar is an next trust challenge which we are facing today, not only in the technology wise, but if you go to see more into rural India, where it is more agri dominant micro markets, where the power is unstable in these regions and these sort of belts. This is where the education on a long term value, reliability, safety assurance, there are a lot of FAQs which they needs to be answered. And how do I simplify technical complexity which they have in partnering with the trust is what we need to drive through the local influencer. And that is what we as Arkabil see in the renewable energy or the solar sort of energy adaptation in the rural India.
And in this process, do you use data and AI somewhere to target these villages, these markets where solar is also coming in and you can also integrate your product?
Yes, of course. As I said, the markets are targeted, and it's always how do we differentiate is that two villages may look alike, but it is very important that we look into uh, the uh, the geographical dynamics as to whether there is a lot of NRI population. So if I talk about some village like Kannur, there might be a lot of NRI population density.
Oh, is it?
And yeah, then too, if I look into the harvest cycle and probably there would be
Yeah, that was,
there
I'm so sorry. That was a point which is very important, and I forgot to mention the harvest cycles that decision that, influence the purchase decisions of the consumer. Please, please, yes.
Yeah. So seasonality activation is very important, because whether it's a harvest cycle, whether it's a wedding season, whether it's
Yeah.
the big house project completions, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana sort of things coming up in Ashok Nagar might be more to focus upon in these sort of
Yeah.
a belt. And these are predictable and can be activated with the micro market timed outreach which we are, driving through. So there will
Yeah.
be a differential logic which we apply to the two villages which may look identical on paper, but adoption might be way too different in terms of the
Yeah.
adaptation. Yeah. So
Okay.
that's what we are doing currently.
Arjun and Rohan, whatever way you can dive
So
in and tell me about data and AI in the era of solar and hybrid energy marrying with this traditional business of cables.
I think Arjun did highlight a very, interesting tech layer that helps identify certain trends that are changing based on, mapping overall India and looking at power grids and looking at where is their concentration.
Yeah.
Comes to solar, I believe that, for us, even in urban households, we are aware that, there is a high initial, investment. Government
Yeah.
is giving rebates on that and it's pushing this, but then for rural India, the adoption continues to be, will continue to be a problem and largely because of lack of awareness. So I think because of the high upfront cost, the awareness continues to be a challenge. My 2 cents about how do we address this problem may not necessarily be only media campaigns. I think it
Yeah.
requires on ground activation, education series, how this
Yeah.
kind of helps in reliable power or cost saving. uh,
Yeah.
in general, economic uplift is something that needs to be done. You can call it a naka activation, or you can call it a mandi activation or a gram panchayat activation. This
Yeah.
will do much more because it will take a little more than a video to drive home the narrative.
Yeah. Arjun, please.
Yeah, I think both Shishir and Rohan made excellent points in terms of how solar and how government subsidies and how measurement all come together. So what we have seen is that there are signals that the government provides today in terms of subsidy measurement, right? So you have
Yeah.
information on PMAY disbursements, like Shashir was mentioning, and
Yeah.
available even at a per tehsil, per village level. So this gives
Hmm.
understanding of the opportunity in that market. Then you have a correlating signal of what are the number of kacha or semi-pakka households, which gives you sort of the market opportunity. Then the solar, which is your clean energy, is what the government calls it. It also provides measurement in terms of at a per village level, what are the number of households that are availing clean energy. Now, it may not be like the complete electrification of that household is running on clean energy, but they may have a geyser or something like that. So that is also measured because government provides subsidy when you implement solar in your home. So you have these signals that tell you, from a sitting in our glass offices, how to perceive these rural markets and how to segment and create specific sort of hyper local plans for the rural market. So we use the signals heavily to understand and help the brands reach audiences depending on whatever the category of the product is, right? So that has sort of been how we've been using that data.
Understood. Shishir sir, I would love for you to just close the conversation, bring it to an end with a view of how the rural marketing playbook is going to be including data and AI for a brand like RR Kabel, and what are the main focus areas for you in the coming areas using data and AI?
So, as I said, the future of a rural marketing lies in precision, whether it is through the digital marketing or the AI integrated into the digital marketing, as well as the loyalty program, partnerships, and of course, what is going to drive, we need to be continuously educating the key
Yeah.
influencers into the rural market and be focusing upon them. And it's not only going to be just the electricians and the trade partners, but also going to the end user as well. And that's where the brand need to invest a lot on the education, building up the trust and the local ecosystem, where the growth we will see would be much faster. And we at RR Kabel is aiming to our goal is that we do power the rural India's aspirations safely,
Yeah.
through sustainability and of course responsibly.
Understood. Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. This was a very insightful conversation. I hope it helped all of you in some way or the other.